Hey, everybody, it's the Plant-Based Business Hour. I'm Elysabeth Alfano. Thank you for being with me. So, we know that meat consumption is rising globally around the world. Plant-based meat consumption is rising as well, but it's not cannibalizing yet global meat consumption. Of that rising meat consumption is pork. Why pork? Because people are addicted to bacon. So, as a main facet of lowering global meat consumption, let's nail bacon, which is why I bring today my guests to the forefront. Shri Artham, thank you for being with me today. I super appreciate it. You are the founder and CEO of Hooray Foods. Thanks for being here.
Thanks so much for having me, Elizabeth. I'm really grateful.
Yes, my pleasure. Okay, so I was looking at your background and I saw some, relationship to food. You've worked in food supply chains in the past, but you've never done the making of food, the manufacturing of food, if we can use those terms. So I wondered if you could give us the lowdown. How and why did you start Hooray Foods? Focusing on
Uh,
bacon, by the way.
yeah, it was what you said that people are eating a lot of pigs, and pigs and animals in general in our food supply chains are one of the biggest contributors to greenhouse gas emissions. So I thought if the folks at Impossible Foods and Beyond Meat could displace cows out of our food system, shouldn't someone be working on pigs? And I naively set out, like you said, without any real experience to do that.
Yeah, I love this story because in this particular niche of foods, I see so many people who have no real food background or experience, but they want that product so badly themselves that they're driven to learn whatever they need to learn. And by the way, it's a big learning curve, but not insurmountable. So many people do it who don't have food backgrounds. So, were you personally driven by a love of bacon, and you thought, I need a product that works for me?
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to eat less meat, and I had stopped eating beef recently at that time. And so I thought, yeah, I still love bacon, and it's a hard thing to remove from my diet. So if I could create a plant-based bacon, I wouldn't need to anymore. And that was important to me. The Good Food Institute, there are a lot of people who think about plant-based options have want us to work on seafood, which I think is really important. But I'm not a big seafood eater, so I thought, let me work on something that I do enjoy a lot, and let me see if I can work on a great bacon.
Yeah, and it's interesting. So many of the food entrepreneurs that I know, and this is why they're my clients on Plant Powered Consulting, is they make the product really for themselves and they make it in their own kitchen. And then they nail something that's pretty good after working on it for a while. And they grow to a commercial kitchen and then they get a co-manufacturer and they're working through all these, I'll say, scientific, technical hurdles, if you will, the hurdles of food, taste, texture, et cetera. And then they're so focused on distribution. How do you get it out to people that they usually end up forgetting about the consumer? And that's the last thing on their mind, which, of course, as a marketer, this always has to be the first thing on your mind from my perspective. So, I speak to a lot of entrepreneurs who just say, like, I had to have it. And so I started making it in my kitchen. Did you do that?
Yeah, I literally invented it in my kitchen over a period of 2 months, and someday I'll have to show you the pictures of all the awful plant-based bacon I made that looked terrible.
Yes.
But eventually it got to a good point, and yeah, it went to a commercial kitchen next, like you said.
Yeah, and how many years did it take you in your own kitchen to figure out, oh, this is the magic of bacon?
I know it's a little bit embarrassing, but it was only 2 months. It was pretty quick.
You know what? I'm not surprised by this because I make a bacon in my kitchen.
Oh,
And
really?
if it were, and it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Really, it's fantastic. I hate to name your competitors, but better than Sweet Life, better than Upton. I mean, it's really Sweet Earth and Light Life, and it's really good. Not better than your bacon, though. I will say that because I've had your bacon, and you've nailed everything, not just the taste, which is what I've got down, but you really have texture and you have the look and all of the whole package. Because for food, of course, we need the whole package. But anyways, toying around in my kitchen just to nail taste because it was for me, so I didn't care about the look of it, etc. Didn't take me that long because I knew what I was going for. Okay, so once you nail your own taste profile for bacon, then what made you say, like, oh yeah, I can take this to households around the world?
So it started with Facebook. I know Facebook has a bad rap right now, but I reached out to Facebook and said, "Does anyone know a chef? Because I'd love to see if this bacon's any good or not." And one of my old coworkers from my consulting days said, "Yeah, my father-in-law is a chef. He's a chef at a restaurant. I forget what it's called. It's like the Spinnaker or something up here in just north of San Francisco in Sausalito." So I remember that day I drove to this chef's house. showed up in his kitchen, and he had this giant pile of pig, of animal bacon sitting on the counter. And I was like, there's no way I'm going to impress this guy. He's a bacon aficionado.
Mm.
But we cooked it up together, and he was like, Sri, this is good. You can sell it. And that gave me the hope to go start this business.
Yeah, that really is incredible. So from there, how long did it take you to get the likes of Whole Foods, which I believe is where you are nationally distributed, correct? How long did it take to get the likes of Whole Foods to say like, yeah, I get it. I get the vision. I'll go with it.
It's funny. So Whole Foods actually ended up reaching out to me. They had heard about us at the Good Food Conference that happened a couple of years ago in San Francisco,
Yes.
and the buyer reached out on LinkedIn. He happened to be in town at the last trade show before the pandemic started. So January, there was a trade show called the Fancy Food Show
Oh,
in San
sure.
Francisco, and they came and visited our office space, our co-working space. And we did a tasting, and he said, "You've got to make this for us. You've got to create this bacon for our stores." And I was like, actually, at the time, I was like, I don't think I want to. I really want to focus on restaurants. I don't want to do grocery just yet because I don't think we're ready for that. I wanted to follow the path of Impossible Foods, which built their brand and their success story in restaurants. But eventually, with some conversation and some reflection, he convinced me, and thankfully he did, because our restaurant business disappeared, and we wouldn't have survived the
Right.
pandemic if it weren't for this. Yeah, and he launched us into 7 out of 11 regions, so about 300 Whole Foods stores across the country, and we had nothing figured out at the time. Hadn't figured out how to manufacture it. Hadn't figured out how to do the packaging. But he committed in February of last year, so that for us to be in 300 stores by November.
And you are now in 300 stores as of, or this coming November, you mean?
This past November,
Wow.
we were
Oh, this past
a year
November
ago.
already.
Yeah.
Right. So, okay. So, I mean, how do you go from making zero bacon with the exception of like yourself and your own BLT to supplying 300 stores?
Yeah, it's like you said, you drop everything and you figure it out.
Yes.
So
Right.
we had to find a manufacturing facility. So I spent a couple of months, traveling around the country trying to find a manufacturer. And then once you get the manufacturer, you have to figure out the equipment. So we
Of course.
hired an engineer who was like a former aerospace engineer,
Mm.
who built and designed and built our bacon machine that makes our bacon. Set up the line, lots of trials and tribulations, working with manufacturing equipment providers, and just like this, by the what's expressed by the skin of our teeth, did we make the first shipment in time at the last week of October last year.
Wow, that's incredible. How hard was it to find a co-manufacturer? And were you worried about trade secrets being leaked out? Because, people are addicted to bacon. I think it's one of the things that keeps them, at least in their mind, locked to meat. So I would think the
Hmm.
IP here would be quite valuable.
Yeah, I was definitely worried about IP because I developed this new way to encapsulate fat that no one's ever done before. So I was worried about that secret. But then as I started the search, that was my biggest concern, was finding a co-packer. Because co-packers are set up for very particular things, right? They might be like a chip manufacturer and they're happy to make other chips, or they make energy bars like a Lara bar or a Cliff bar, and they're happy to make other bars. But there are no, like you said, there's no plant-based bacon manufacturers out there, especially who make it anything like ours. So it was really hard to find someone that would take us. So we could only find one place in the entire country that would pick us up, that would let us work in their space.
And I'm curious, is it a meat place then? It's a meat manufacturing place, or?
It was a plant-based.
Oh, it's a
So this
plant-based place.
facility, yeah, exactly, it was plant-based.
Okay. And I'm curious, you don't have to tell me the city, but the region? Is it West Coast or
So we
Midwest?
started off in a place in the West Coast in the LA area, and now we've actually moved to the middle of the country. We're in Illinois now. We're on our second co-packer.
Fantastic. I think I might know that co-packer because I'm from Chicago. So I think I
Oh,
might know that co-packer. Yeah, I think I've connected them to quite a few people actually. Wow, that's pretty amazing. That's really awesome. Well, I always think all this talk about burgers, and then you say, we're moving to alt fish. We've talked about it a lot on this show. There's always sausages and, meatballs and things. Not that many people are diving into bacon. And I
mhm.
will say there's the plant-based, plant-focused, vegan, vegetarian-focused bacons, and I've already mentioned them on the show. And then there's like, let's get the meat eaters kind of bacon, which is where I consider you, and also someone who's been on this show, someone I have a lot of admiration for, is Eben from My Eats of,
Oh, I don't know them.
oh, yes. Oh my gosh,
Yeah,
they do
all right, I'll check them
bacon
out.
out of
Oh, really?
mushrooms,
Oh, cool.
And the two of you are really going for the meat market, but I wonder why there isn't more competition. So, is it that the form and texture are hard, because you're not a thick whole cut of meat, but a bacon is a solid piece of meat, unlike a ground, which is so much easier.
Yeah, I think that's the issue. Is a lot of plant-based meats use similar technologies, like so if they're burgers and sausages tend to be homogeneous, they tend to use a technology called texturized vegetable protein.
Sure.
So it's pretty well established, but it doesn't lend itself as well to bacon, I think, for two reasons. One is bacon's fatty, right? The defining characteristic of bacon is that it cooks in its own fat when you're frying it up. So I had to come up with a way to encapsulate a lot of fat in a plant-based meat.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the first challenge. And the second is bacon is kind of like a structured cut in that there's lean and fat sections, unlike a sausage or a burger or maybe even a fish fillet that are a little more homogeneous.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's why people have struggled a little more with bacon than with other products.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll exchange notes when this is over, because
Sure.
I'll happy to share my how I do my bacon at home, which is so
I'm worried
good.
about you becoming a competitor.
No, I have no desire to. I have so much desire to cook for people. I have no desire to manufacture food for people, or do any sort of large scale safety issue kind of thing of food for people. Just zero interest. Well, let's talk a little bit about the nutrition profile. And first, I want to, for everybody who's listening, let's see if I can share my screen. I do want to show you, because I had said before that, personally, I just nailed the taste. I feel like I have, but you'd really nailed, like, look at this, everybody who's watching on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Look at this bacon. Now, this is plant-based bacon, and it looks exactly like plant-based, like real bacon. I mean, look at that. You were talking about how it cooks in its own fat, and it's got some parts that are lean, and it's got some parts that are really fatty. So, yeah, just as you can see, really looks great. HoorayFoods.com is the website. But let's talk a little bit about the nutritional profile. So you say right on your website, all your nutritional profile right there. So it's primarily made out of coconut oil. Is that fair to say?
There's the three main ingredients are coconut oil, tapioca starch, and rice flour.
Okay. So, coconut oil, I find that difficult to work with, like very
Mm.
runny, etc. How have you, I mean, I guess you can't share the IP of encapsulating that fat. I totally get that. But how have you found coconut oil to work with?
When you're making a plant-based meat, you don't have a lot of choices because you need a fat that stays solid at room temperature. And so
Yes,
you can think
right.
of like sunflower oil or canola oil. These things tend to be liquid at room temperature. So there's
Hmm.
really only two fats, maybe three, that people can use. There's coconut oil, palm oil, and then cacao butter. People sometimes use cocoa butter.
Yeah.
So and coconut oil just works really well. It's widely available. It has a similar mouthfeel to animal fat. So it's been a choice. That's our primary choice, and it's worked pretty well for us from the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah. But otherwise, let's see if I can shoot. I shouldn't have unshared my screen. Let's see if
Yeah,
I can go back, because I'd love for people to be able to see the label, which I'll say is pretty clean label. I mean, it always kills me when people say, hold on here, let me get to it.
that's our bacon locator.
That's a bacon locator. Yeah, you guys look at that, all over the United States, which is so fantastic. In Whole Foods, as we had said, and I just want to find the nutritional profile, which I believe is in here.
I think so.
Yeah, it is. Because I just did it last night. Here we go. So, one strip of bacon, 60 calories, 3 grams of saturated fat. So I'm going to say, not bad compared to what meat is in terms of saturated fat. And people are always saying to me, "Oh, well, plant-based foods, they're not that healthy." And I just think, like, as compared to what? Compared to a carrot? Okay, not healthy compared to a head of lettuce. But if you're comparing to meat, which has TMAO, trimethylene N oxide, it has cholesterol, it has saturated fat, of course, no fiber, these kinds of things. And here as well, we're seeing no fiber and we're seeing some saturated fat for sure. But we're also seeing no cholesterol, and of course, no antibiotics, no hormones, no TMAO, trimethylene N oxide. So, just some things for people to consider when they look at their nutrition and still want bacon. What is the primary use that you do with your bacon?
I mean, our preferred way of eating it is a BLT.
Me
It
too.
just works really well. Or a breakfast sandwich. I'm an addict for breakfast sandwiches, and so it adds that crispiness to a sandwich and the umami and saltiness that I like on my breakfast sandwiches. So those are the two ways we tend to serve it around here.
So, okay, this is a little bit off the reservation, but we've been making bacon
Sure.
sushi. So I'll make
Interesting.
the bacon myself, and then we put it in the middle, and then we roll it, and we have bacon sushi. So we've been really liking that, just kind of to switch it up. But otherwise, yes, it is the classic BLT that we do in this household. Well, we talked about it a little bit right before the show, but we have this human love of bacon, and yet at the same time, we have African swine flu raging through China, decimation of, I want to say 50%. I can double check that after this show.
Wow.
I want to say 50% last year. And that means that these animals are killed and then they just import 50% more. I mean, the consumption of pork in Asia in particular, very strong, obviously culturally very strong, but the swine fever, and Europe has had problems with swine flu as well. So just underscoring as we come out of, maybe that is a big fat question, come out of COVID, and we see the transmission of these diseases. Now, currently, African swine flu does not transmit to humans, but I have seen people say like it's only a matter of time because of the conditions that they're kept in factory farms so close to each other. That's why when it spreads, it's a very active flu. So when it spreads, you're losing, all of the pigs that have been in contact. It just spreads so quickly. So, another reason to go for plant-based foods as we hopefully head out of a pandemic. But I don't know. Have any of those conversations taken place with the grocery stores? I'm curious if at that level they're starting to recognize like, hey, people care about maybe more than their health and maybe more than taste.
Yeah, I guess it doesn't. So, I mean, to be honest, the grocery stores tend to just know it's a trend. At least that's what they talk about. They know that plant-based
Okay.
bacon will sells well, and they see our sales, and then they can see that it's selling really well. So that's what tends to get them interested. But I think about Asia a lot because I think most pigs are consumed in Asia, like you hinted. So, one day I'd love to make like a pork belly or a ground pork that we could offer to help, take the stress off the animals in the food system there.
Mm-hmm. And do you come to this from the animal welfare side at all, or was it your own personal health? I know we talked a little bit in the beginning, but
Yeah. For me, it's climate change. As I
Mhm.
mentioned, I live here in San Francisco, and so we deal with fires now. And when I first moved here 17 years ago, that was not a common thing we had to deal with. So there was a few years ago, there was a campfire, a fire called the campfire, a few
Oh yeah.
hours north of San Francisco, and I couldn't walk outside for 3 days because it was so smoky. And it was around that time where I just felt I had to do something. The climate, it doesn't matter what part of the world or country you're in, like you have some sort of weather phenomenon that's different than it used to be that you're dealing with now. And so I
Hmm.
want to do something about that.
Hmm. So that makes total sense to me. But when I talk to people outside of the plant-based business hour and I say, oh, the environment, the connection between animal agriculture and the impact on the environment is so direct and so large. And they look at me with big eyes and say, like, what? There's a connection between our current food supply system based on animal agriculture and the environment? How so? Are you seeing that more people are starting to make this connection? Which, by the way, documented, this isn't Shri and I talking, this is the UN and the FAO. And I mean, it's well documented that there's this connection.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a tricky one for us, and we're going through some rebranding work right now. And there's three main reasons people consider plant-based. And in the US, I think health is the biggest one. And then environment and animal welfare are like distant seconds, or, I don't know which one's which, second or third. So, while as much as my passion is environment, I think a lot of vegans might be vegan because of animal welfare. So we talk about that. And then health. So, we have a minimally processed product. It's
Right.
gluten free, it's soy free, it's nitrate free. You listen to a whole bunch of things that are used in meats that aren't in our products. So that's also something we want to make sure we advance, is to understand, recognize that in general, plant-based meats are healthier than animal meats.
Sure, absolutely. Because we're talking about a spectrum when we talk of health. Just
Hmm.
one more shout out here because I do hear people quite a lot on this show say, like, "Oh, well, I got into this because I didn't want to make a Franken meat or whatever," and they're trying to say that they're making a healthier burger. But again, I want to stress to people, healthier than what? Because
Hmm.
these products aren't made for the vegan who's already eating carrots. That's great if you are that advanced. But the majority of people, 97% of the world actually, because plant-based meats only take up 3% of the marketplace globally, of the $1.4 trillion meat market globally, we're only 3%. So we are 4 billion worldwide. 97% of people are trying to get a better handle on their health. And I don't want to deny those people because the product isn't a carrot. So, on the spectrum of health, for the people who need it the most, and they are the majority, this is a big step forward. So I went to the Good Food Institute conference this year. I mean, I go every year, but this year, and they were saying, they didn't give a geographic region, so I'm going to assume that it was an average of the entire globe, that environment is now surpassing, probably due to millennials and Gen Z, the number one interest as to why people are interested in changing their food. So I think I don't see it. I still see a lot of people not understanding when I say there's a connection between animal agriculture and our food supplies and the environment. But the Good Food Institute says that people are starting to make this connection. So I'm happy about that.
Yeah, me too. That's great.
Yeah, it's great news, huh? Okay,
Yeah.
well, you alluded to something. You said, we might get into pork bellies. So I wondered if you could give us the vision for Hooray Foods and what might be coming down the pipeline. And I know you have big news to drop today on the Plant-Based Business Hour. So maybe you can give us a little bit of both.
Yeah, in terms of products, first and foremost, our focus is bacon. Our bacon that's out there at Whole Foods and now in Perfect Foods nationally and a bunch of other local grocery stores is selling pretty well and people like it. But it's still not as good as it can be. And it's not, say, I think an Impossible or Beyond Burger are better burgers than our Hooray Bacon is compared to animal bacon. So that's our focus. You think we're pretty close?
It's so hard to make that connection, right? So
Yeah.
Is that what you're trying to say? That we are to bacon what Impossible is to a burger? Is that what you're saying?
That's what we want to be. Yeah. I don't think we're there yet.
Be.
That's what we want to be. Yeah.
I think you're close. I think you're between 85 and 90% of that. Would you say that?
I like that grading. I would say maybe like 80, 75 to 80, but
okay. Yeah. So in the ballpark. Yeah, you're close.
In the ballpark. Yeah. But we want to get to 95, 100, or maybe one day even surpass. And that's something I think about. What would be a better bacon than real bacon? Maybe it has less fat that you have to deal with in the pan, or maybe it can be in a different shape that's more conducive to putting it in a sandwich. So there's a lot more we can do with bacon, and so that's our primary focus. But we will one day do other products. We've already started prototyping some things here around our lab, which is behind me.
Yeah, that's really exciting. I like bacon to go, so I guess that kind of exists in jerky or whatever, but I don't want bacon bits on a salad. I really want, and this is just maybe a packaging thing, I really just want bacon to go. I don't know.
Yeah. Shelf-stable bacon. That's something else that we have. One of our advisors is an athlete, and he wants shelf-stable bacon that he can take on hikes or eat after a run.
So I would take that hiking with me. So you heard it here first, folks. The creative process going on right now at the Plant-Based Business Hour. Well, sure, you've got, what a market to capture if you can capture bacon. And yours is the only, as I was saying, my eats with Eben Bayer at Last Foods. That's out of mushrooms. And so, you two are really the only two going after this that I know of. And so what a huge market to get. So I understand that that's where your focus is. But you maybe had some big news to share with us today. What you got on your plate?
Sure. Yeah. So what I'm really excited about is, so as I mentioned, we started in 7 out of 11 Whole Foods regions last November. And starting this month, we're going to be in every Whole Foods stores across the country. So we're super
every Whole Foods store. Every store, not just every region, but every store.
Every store, yeah.
And that's more than 300, right?
That's about 500.
500. Wow. And so how many pounds of bacon is that?
Oh, wow. I have not done the math on that. What I have done the math on is how much bacon we produced today, and it's over 1 million. So we've produced over 1 million strips of bacon. I don't know what the weight is. I'd have to do some math to figure that out.
Yeah, no, it's okay. 1 million strips of bacon. And so how many packages of bacon is that? Well, I guess we can divide by what, 7?
Divide by 10. So yeah,
divide
over
by 10,
100,000 packs of bacon.
Wow. You must feel so proud.
I'm really proud. Yeah. Yes. Literally a year and a half ago, we were making bacon by hand in the kitchen at our commercial kitchen, like you said. And me and Chef Sam, who was my only employee at the time, would spend the whole afternoon to make like 300 strips of bacon. And now we're in a factory where we make like 30 to 40,000 strips of bacon a day.
Wow, that is incredible. Tina Walker says, wow, that's amazing. Congrats. I can't wait to get this. Well, head to Whole Foods, Tina. It's awesome. Hooray Foods bacon in Whole Foods nationwide. About 500 stores coming very soon, but currently 300 stores. So you don't have to wait. Go ahead and get it. It's so very exciting. Again, I started the show saying a lot of entrepreneurs just say, I want to see change in the world. And I know that change can happen through the food supply system. And I need a replacement for my milk, my bacon, my burger, my sausage, my meatballs, whatever it is. And I'm just going to do it in my own kitchen because I'm not going to wait. I want change now. What are the biggest challenges that you encountered on your journey of making bacon, even though you aren't a chef and have never made food before?
Oh wow, every week feels like a different challenge. I think maybe the most consistent, persistent one is manufacturing,
Mhm.
because we're making something totally new and trying to convince someone, and working with someone who's distant, like who's either somewhere in the state or somewhere in the country to make the bacon at a certain scale. And every time we change one thing, so right now, for example, there are a lot of ingredient shortages that people know about. There's supply chain issues. And
Sure.
our product is very finely tuned, so it's not easy to change from one coconut oil vendor to another if we have a shortage. And so that might change the viscosity of the batter or the mixture that we're using, in which case that might affect how the bacon machine performs. So it's just amazing how much I've been learning about manufacturing in particular, more so than food science, in this journey.
Yeah, I'm not surprised by that. That's really where the main hurdles happen. It's one thing to make bacon, it's another thing to scale up bacon.
Hmm.
Speaking of scaling it, right now, a package of bacon, at least the last time I got a package, bought it in my Whole Foods, was about $9. Is that still the case?
It is, yeah. It's I think typically 8.49 at Whole Foods.
Okay, 8.49. Well, that's already better than what it was. It was $9, I think, give or take, when I did it. Um, Price parity, just this annoying question because meat is subsidized. So how can you even begin to have a reasonable conversation about it? But 8.49, regardless, even if we're not shooting for price parity, 8.49 is up there. When do you think that the prices will start to come down? At what quantity of production do you think prices will come down?
It's really about automation. So what can
Mhm.
we, right now there's about 20 people or so who work on our production line to make our bacon. And that's where a lot of the expense comes in. So if we can invest in more automation, which means
Mm.
money, raising more
Yeah.
money, and automating more things so that we can get the throughput, so the amount of bacon we're making every hour, way up, and the number of people needed way down, that'll help us bring our costs down. So it's really achievable.
Mhm.
I don't want to get into too many details, but our ingredient cost is less than that of bacon. So, pork belly,
Oh.
if you wanted to go buy pork belly out there on the market, it's $1.40 a pound roughly, and our ingredients are less than that, like significantly less. So then it's just a question of manufacturing cost. If we can automate as much as the pork industry or any other industry has, we can bring our costs down. So I'm very confident that one day, it might be 2 to 5 years from now, if we can be at parity or even less than real bacon, than animal bacon.
Wow, 2 to 5 years. I mean, that's pretty incredible that you might have price parity in 2 to 5 years. And how many people are working at Hooray Foods?
We're about 14 people now.
14. Wow, so
Mhm.
sort of a growing group. Well, I remember when I first heard about Hooray Foods, it was through the Glasswell Syndicate, and it
Mhm.
was my first day with Glasswell Syndicate, which for those who may not know is this group of people who get together to do investing in plant-based or fermented proteins or cellular agriculture as a group so that they can kind of learn together and do some of the due diligence together. It was my very first day. I had confused the time. So I was on the West Coast time and it was given in Central time. And so I came in and I heard maybe the last 5 minutes of your pitch. And so I just couldn't really wrap my mind around it in full, but it stayed with me. Bacon, bacon. That's something that I'd really like to invest in. And by the time at the time, I think you were doing as small as maybe can I continue the story? I just want to make sure
Yeah,
this is
go
okay
go
with
for
you.
it. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. At the time, I think you were taking as small as maybe like 15,000, or you were willing to make an exception. It was supposed to be 25,000, but you were even willing to have these conversations about something smaller. And then I turned around 3 months later, and I was like, okay, I finally got my like sea legs with investing, and I'd love to go in at this smaller amount or whatever. And you were like, oh no, we don't talk to anybody unless. Can I say the number? Is that
Sure.
okay? And we don't talk to anybody unless it's 100,000. And I was like, well, that ship has sailed for me, but in a very short amount of time. So congratulations on that. Are you raising more money?
Always, it feels like, yeah. So we'll be raising, like I said, we need to invest in more automation, and we also are working on the next iteration of our bacon. So we'll need to raise some more money to make that come to life.
Do I get to be a taste tester? Because I didn't get in the investor window, but can I be in the taste tester window?
Of course, how could I turn you down?
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. Oh, that's so fantastic. Okay, well, I hope that that new raise goes well, and that if you are interested in investing, folks, please go find Shri or contact me, and I can put you guys in touch. Because very, very exciting way to change the world. And you're speaking to a Sicilian here, so how important is food in everyone's life? I mean, what could be better? You get to change the world with food. Oh my God, it's just like joy every day. Okay, well, as we kind of wrap up here, I like to ask everybody. I used to, when I started the show, I would say, oh, what are your predictions in the next 10 years? Well, I certainly don't bother with that anymore. Much closer to us would be 3 to 5 years. Things are changing so quickly. For pork in particular, where do you see pork going? I just want to say we do have a couple of, larger players. David Young, I love him, out of China with Omni Pork, doing so much to bring plant-based pork to China the way that the Chinese would like it. So not in bacon form, but in other kinds of forms. For dumplings and spam, this kind of thing. And then barbecue pulled pork from Barbecue, which is in North Carolina. They do plant-based pulled pork. So lots of different types of pork product out there. But in general, if you can say for pork and then for bacon, what do you think the next 3 to 5 years look like?
For us, or just in general?
In general, your predictions for where
Yeah.
the market's going for pork, plant-based pork.
Yeah, I think that in the less structured cuts are probably like the things are going to take off in the near term. So grounded pork, shredded pork, even our bacon is somewhat structured but not entirely structured.
Yeah.
I think where we think about going next is, can we do other sort of fatty sliced meats? So like imagine sliced hams or bolognas. There are some deli meats out there, but that's another thing that I think about. And then you get to there are some good carnitas or shredded pork, and then the really structured one would be like a pork chop or something like that. That would be really interesting to see if someone can work out like a very structured cut like that, which is like a bone and fat and
Yeah.
muscle all together.
Yeah, I think the bone is going to be very interesting. And I know people are working on that, but I would agree with you. Deli is taking off like wildfire, and there isn't really a plant-based ham that I know of. And then you get into things like Serrano ham and, this
Or
kind of
prosciutto, or
prosciutto.
yeah, some of
Wouldn't
the really premium cuts or premium types of preparations.
If I can help you in any way, I want a vegan prosciutto so badly. And to be a vegan prosciutto, and I don't want to slam anybody, you have to do more than call yourself a vegan prosciutto. Like, you have to be really close, and it has to take taste and texture are going to be a big deal there, I think. And it's so thin. It's got your work cut out for you for sure. But if I can help you in any way, it'll be very interesting to see how that all shakes out. Some exit questions as we wrap up that maybe are a little closer to home. What would you like your legacy to be? And it can be about your endeavor here or something more grand scale.
There's a podcaster I really love, John Green, who was also he wrote The Fault in Our Stars and some other movies and
Yes.
books.
Yes.
And I think he talked about this giant ball of paint he visited somewhere. It might have been South Dakota or somewhere in that part of the country. And he was saying that that this ball of paint was anyone can come along and add a coat of paint to that ball and make their impact. I think now it's the size of a single room, like probably as big as the room I'm in right now. And he said that all any of us can really hope who are trying to change the world is to add as thick a coat of paint as possible. I alone, no single person alone probably can change the course of our, where humanity's going, but we can try to do as big a job as possible. So I would love to see people, I don't know, maybe it's a 10 or 20 or 30% reduction in pigs in the world. There's something like 75 million pigs on US farms today. If I could say thanks to Hooray, that's numbed it down to 50 or 60 or made a measurable difference, then I'd feel like I've done my job.
I am so grateful. I can't even believe I've gotten this far into the podcast without saying pigs are extremely intelligent. They're much smarter than dogs. When there was the North Carolina floods, which is where all the majority of the pig factory farms are, many of the pigs were able to unlock their crates and get out because they're able to figure out doors
Mm.
and locks. And then after getting out themselves, they would go and try to help their friends. They're very community oriented. And for their babies, there's a great book. I think it's called Singing to the Moon. This is going to be in the show notes. Pigs sing to their babies.
Wow.
I mean, they don't sing lullabies that we sing, but they sing, in their language. There's specific things that they do when they're nursing. It's awful what pigs go through. Awful because they're so smart. And I always waver, like, what's worse? Of course, I don't ever want to see chickens harmed. Of course. But I also often waver, like, what's worse? The horror that is dairy, that is built on breaking the bond between mother and baby. And that's what dairy is. Force impregnate, break that bond, steal that baby, and then you can capture all the milk. So you're just forcing this long time suffering from these entities that are biologically meant to be together. Or pigs who are so smart and so concerned about their babies and know what's going on. Anyways, I've gone off on a tangent. What's wrong with me? Come back, Elizabeth. I've gone off on a tangent. But yes, if you could take down from 75 million, Godspeed. Godspeed, really, that would be wonderful. Okay, so that's your legacy, hopefully. But sort of the flip side of that question is not what you want to be in the future, but looking towards the past. What do you wish you knew 10 years ago that you know now?
Whew, that if there's a change in the world that you want to see, you can make it, you can create it. And oftentimes people ask me, how did you start a plant-based meat company? And I was like, I tried. And
Yeah.
there's not really that much different between you and me other than I tried and maybe you didn't. And it takes a lot to try, right? You have to have financial security, you have to feel supported. I was lucky to have all those things, but if you have those things, there's so much more work to be done. I encourage everyone to try.
Yeah, I really love that. People always ask the same thing of me, like, well, how did you start this plant-based business hour? And I always say, like, I don't think I realized 10 years ago the power of my own voice, and sort of to mirror what
Mm,
you're saying, the power of your own actions.
mhm.
And I would never take that for granted now. Now I feel like, oh no, my voice is really powerful. And the voice of one is strong, the voice of two stronger, the work of one is strong together with the work of two, three, four. You really will see change when you align your values with your skill set. You really see change. And that's what you're doing here. So I am so deeply grateful for that. Okay, you're running around, you're super busy. You are aligning your values and your skill set. So you don't have time to chat or do interviews like this. You're running around and you've forgotten to have lunch. What's your go to snack?
Oh, wow. I mean, I've got this great Suja water in front of me. I love ginger smoothies, so that's what I'm drinking right now. Not I don't have any financial stake in Suja. That's not a plug. I just enjoy
Well,
it.
looks good. I've never had it actually.
Oh, it's really good. I'm
Okay.
a sucker for tortilla chips also. It's got organic corn, of course.
I know. I know. Down the rabbit hole. I make a lot of guacamole and it's
Mm.
just there's no turning back. Once that bag is open,
Oh yeah.
gosh darn, yeah, it's hard to pull me back. Okay, if you are running around same day, super busy, didn't have time for lunch, maybe you didn't even get to have your snack. It's so busy because things aren't exactly going your way. Is there a phrase that you tell yourself to get yourself back in the game?
It's something that we try to practice here at Hooray is appreciation. So whenever I find myself kind of stressed out, I try to take a step back and take a moment of appreciation. We just had our weekly team meeting this morning, and we start off by everyone sharing a hooray, which means like something good that happened this past week. And I think it's just a great way to start off any situation, or it's a great sort of tone setter for our weeks is think about what's great that's happened this past week. So that's what I try to do when things are not going my way.
I love that. I love that as not just a thought, but an implementation. Not everybody executes on their thought to be grateful or appreciative or what have you. And when you can come together as a group, I think that's really lovely. Another reason I'll say that that's lovely, kind of bringing it back to business, is one of the things that I see, again, because in consulting, but also in interviewing, is that plant-based companies are growing so quickly. As you said, like a year ago, you were making bacon by hand practically in your kitchen, although you'd maybe go into a commercial facility. And now you're about to be in 500 Whole Foods. It's growing so quickly that people can accidentally lose their company culture, not keep that cohesive group with their employees that you'd think would naturally be there because they're also mission aligned. Everyone's, trying to do this great, change the world kind of thing. But it's easy for things to go off the rails if you're not keeping that company culture as you move forward really quickly in the world. So that kind of exercise is just, as you say, a great way to start the week and a great way to keep everybody tied. So very
It's something
awesome.
I think about a lot, is keeping our culture as we grow.
Oh, that's nice. How would you define your company culture?
It's funny, we had a team building session actually 2 weeks ago to co-design what our culture will be like as we grow. And I think one of the things that we're hoping to embody, so everyone hold us accountable, is to really treat each other as people and humans first. So be kind to each other, understand that you might have obligations outside of work, you might have interests that you want to express in work, and really just realize we're not all corporate robots or whatever, doing what we're told. We're all humans working together for a common cause. And I think that's something I'm excited about, building a place that I would want to work in.
Yeah, that seems so exciting. Well, what a great vibe you've got going at Hooray Foods. I mean, the name kind of says it all, Hooray Foods. So, of course, there's a great vibe at Hooray Foods, which is now in 300 Whole Foods, growing to 500 Whole Foods. What was the date that that's going to happen again? This
Should happen by the end of the month.
Wow. So right
Yeah, so
here
the
in
next couple of weeks.
October. Yeah, so
Mhm.
that's pretty awesome. But you don't have to wait till the end of October. You can go to hoorayfoods.com and put in your zip code, and you will find where you can get Hooray Bacon near you. And then you can make your BLT, and you can make your eggs and bacon sandwich, and you can make your bacon sushi like I did last night. So these are all great ways to get your bacon on. I'm so happy, Sri Artham, to have you here on my show. Thank you for all that you do. Thank you for helping pigs. Thank you for helping meat eaters get a healthier bacon. It's so great for them too, that 97% that we think about all the time and want to give them better food options. So thank you for doing all that you do. I do appreciate it. You, Sri, don't go away. Everybody else on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube, thank you for being with me. I will see you next Tuesday. Peace out.